Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, and before we jump in, I just want to quickly mention that today's material is actually drawn from a SpeakDuo lesson.
Right.
So if you want to meet new people from around the world and practice English on video calls to become more confident with your speaking abilities, you can go to SpeakDuo.com.
Highly recommend it. And, well, we are jumping straight into the idioms today.
Absolutely.
Because this deep dive is specifically designed for you, the advanced English learner, aiming to elevate your everyday vocabulary.
Yeah, we aren't just, giving you a list of definitions to memorize today.
No, not at all. We are exploring the deep contextual nuances of these phrases because understanding the context can completely transform the way you express yourself.
Exactly.
Whether you're, in a corporate boardroom or sitting for your IELTS exam.
So let's start with our first theme, which is upbringing, background, and character.
A great place to start.
And the very first phrase we pull from the material is out of wedlock, which, technically means being born to parents who are not legally married.
Right, that is the literal definition.
But honestly, in today's world, why wouldn't I just say someone comes from a single-parent household?
Well, because of the historical and legal weight attached to the words.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, single parent is a very clinical, modern demographic term. It's what you check on a census form.
Right. Very matter of fact.
Exactly. But out of wedlock carries centuries of societal, legal, and historical baggage.
Oh, wow.
It implies a time when marriage was a strict legal prerequisite for things like inheritance or even basic social standing.
So if I use it at work, I probably shouldn't be talking about, my coworker's new baby.
Oh, definitely not. That would be incredibly out of place today.
Right.
But imagine your boss is discussing a historical legal case or maybe a complex inheritance issue regarding land rights that, depended on whether an heir was born out of wedlock.
So it instantly frames the conversation in a formal historical context.
Exactly. It shows you understand the weight of the term.
That makes the boundary much clearer. So if you're an advanced learner studying for IELTS Part 2, and the prompt asks you to describe a book you've read, this would be a perfect flex.
Oh, absolutely.
You wouldn't just say the main character was raised by a single mom. You could say, I recently read a historical novel about a character born out of wedlock who had to overcome immense societal pressures.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal use of the phrase. It proves to the examiner that you understand the tone of historical vocabulary.
Right, not just the dictionary definition.
Exactly.
So moving from historical rules to household rules, the next phrase is being seen and not heard.
Yes, a very classic phrase.
This is the expectation for children to be quiet and obedient in adult company. To me, it feels exactly like being forced to keep your microphone on mute during a Zoom call, even though your camera is on.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Right. You're there, but you can't speak.
You are visibly present, but completely silenced. And, if we look at the mechanics of this phrase, it's vital to contrast seen and not heard with a word like shy.
Oh, because shyness is a personality trait. It comes from the inside.
Precisely. You feel timid. But being seen and not heard is an external rule imposed on you by authority figures.
So you might actually be a really talkative kid.
Right, but the environment demands silence. And at work, you might actually use this metaphorically.
Oh, how so?
Well, say you're advising a junior colleague before they step into a high-stakes board meeting.
Right.
You might tell them, just for today's presentation with the executives, it's best to be seen and not heard until they explicitly open the floor for questions.
Oh, I like that. You're not telling them to change their personality.
No, not at all.
You're just giving them a strategic rule of engagement for that specific room.
Exactly.
And if I apply this to an IELTS speaking test about my childhood, I could say something like, I attended a strict boarding school where the pupils were expected to be seen and not heard, which really shaped my sense of discipline.
Perfect. It paints a very vivid picture of the strict environment you grew up in.
Now, speaking of personality, let's look at a weak streak, which means a particular flaw, vulnerability, or tendency in character.
Yes.
When I hear streak,
Yeah.
I think of something running deep through a person's core. Like, is this as dramatic as having a fatal flaw?
Oh, no. Not nearly as dramatic, and that's the crucial nuance here.
Okay.
A fatal flaw is something that will ultimately destroy your life or your career, Like a Shakespearean tragic hero,
Right,
right?
like Macbeth or something.
Exactly. But a weak streak is much milder. It's just a soft spot.
So, like a recurring bad habit.
Yeah, it's the thing that makes you human and a little fallible, but it definitely won't ruin you.
So, in an office environment, my colleagues might joke about our manager having a weak streak for approving overly flashy presentations.
Spot on.
It's not bankrupting the company, it's just this known vulnerability they have for pretty colors.
Yes, exactly. And for an IELTS speaking test, if they ask you to discuss a personal challenge, you really don't want to sound like a disaster by confessing a fatal flaw.
Right. You don't want to say, my fatal flaw is that I destroy every team I work with.
Exactly. Don't do that. But you could admit, I have a bit of a weak streak for procrastination, so I have to set incredibly rigid deadlines for myself.
That's good. It shows high-level vocabulary and self-awareness without sounding unhireable.
Exactly.
So if a weak streak is a small vulnerability, the next phrase seems to be the ultimate defense mechanism, which is being slow to anger.
Yes, a very powerful trait.
So this means being patient, calm, and difficult to provoke. But I kind of want to push back on this one.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
If someone is slow to anger, doesn't that just mean they are a pushover? Like someone who just takes abuse and doesn't stand up for themselves?
Ah, that is the crucial distinction, and it really all comes down to the mechanics of power.
Okay, explain that.
Well, a pushover absorbs bad treatment because they lack the confidence or the tools to defend themselves.
Right.
But someone who is slow to anger, they possess absolute emotional control.
Oh, I see.
They aren't failing to react. They are actively choosing patience over reactivity.
So they have the power to explode, but they keep it holstered.
Exactly.
So if I'm praising a colleague who just survived a total nightmare of a meeting, I could say she is incredibly slow to anger, which is exactly why she brilliantly handles hostile client negotiations.
Yes. She holds the power in the room precisely because she doesn't lose her temper.
That makes total sense.
And in an IELTS Part 2 context, if you need to describe a respected mentor, this is a really heavy-hitting phrase.
Like what I admired most about my professor was that he was always slow to anger no matter how chaotic the classroom became.
Right. It shows deep respect for their emotional regulation.
And managing that perception of power and control is exactly how you build a professional reputation. Which actually brings us to the tools you need to do that in our second theme: professional drive and making an impression.
Yes, shifting gears to the workplace.
First up here is stock and trade, which is defined as a characteristic skill, product, or usual method of work.
Right.
My immediate thought is to compare this to someone's bread and butter. I mean, aren't they just the exact same thing?
Well, they often overlap in casual conversation, but the mechanism behind them is quite different.
Okay, how so?
Bread and butter refers to what sustains you, like the literal income or the basic product that pays your bills.
Right, a moneymaker.
Exactly. But stock and trade originally referred to the literal goods a merchant kept in their shop.
Oh, okay.
So today it refers to the specific skill or trait or tool you rely on to generate that success.
Okay, so the bread and butter is the paycheck, but the stock and trade is the skill set you use to get it.
Precisely.
So if I'm having a performance review, I might tell my boss, well, project management is my official title, creative problem solving is my true stock and trade.
Yes, exactly. It's what you really want to be known for.
And if you're taking the IELTS exam and discussing essential traits for a specific career,
You might say something like, for a successful therapist, profound empathy and patience really have to be their stock in trade.
right, it's their core tool.
Exactly.
Let's look at another way to build that professional reputation, which is doing something off one's own bat. This means doing something entirely on your own initiative without being asked.
Yeah.
But like in a highly structured corporate setting, is this dangerous? Is it the same as going rogue?
Oh, definitely not. Going rogue implies breaking the rules, ignoring protocol and acting destructively.
Right, like a loose cannon.
Exactly. But doing something off your own bat actually comes from cricket. It means stepping up to swing the bat yourself.
Oh, I had no idea it was a sports idiom.
Yeah. And it is highly positive. It demonstrates proactive, really helpful leadership.
So you see a problem and you fix it, but within the rules.
Yes.
So if I'm explaining a recent win to my boss, I could say, I noticed the client files were a complete mess, so I organized a new digital filing system off my own bat.
Perfect. You solved a problem before anyone even had to ask you to do it.
And if an IELTS examiner asks you to describe a time you helped others,
You could respond. I noticed several classmates were struggling with the advanced grammar modules, so I started a weekend study group off my own bat.
That sounds incredibly natural. But taking initiative gets you noticed, sure. Having the right skills only gets you so far, though, if you don't look the part.
Very true.
That brings us to being well turned out, meaning dressed very smartly, neatly, and elegantly.
Yes.
Now, I know people who always want to be the fanciest person in the room. Is this just the same as being overdressed?
Not at all. Overdress means wearing clothes that are completely inappropriate for the context,
Yeah.
like wearing a tuxedo to a casual backyard barbecue.
Right, which just makes everyone uncomfortable.
Exactly. But well turned out simply means crisp, polished, and perfectly presented for whatever the specific occasion demands.
Oh, so it's about the polish, not the formality.
Yes, exactly.
So at work, I might compliment a colleague right before they step into a major client pitch and say, "You are looking exceptionally well turned out today. You're going to do great in there."
Right. It gives them a great boost of confidence.
And for an IELTS setting.
If you are describing a memorable event, you could say, attending my friend's formal wedding, I rented a tailored suit and felt genuinely well turned out for the occasion.
Nice. And when you look the part and you have the skills, you usually end up meeting people of consequence.
Yes, you do.
This means important, influential, or prominent individuals. But I have to ask, is this just a fancy Downton Abbey way of saying VIPs or celebrities?
Well, no. A celebrity is just famous, right? They might have a lot of Instagram followers, but no actual leverage in an industry.
Good point.
But people of consequence hold actual, tangible power. They have influence and decision-making ability in their specific fields.
So they are the ones who actually move the needle. So during a debrief with my boss about an industry summit, I wouldn't talk about the minor celebrities I saw. I'd say the networking was fantastic. There were several people of consequence from the tech sector in attendance.
Yes, exactly. You're telling your boss you met the real decision makers.
And in an IELTS Part 2 prompt about a meaningful event.
You could really impress the examiner by saying, I attended a university conference where I had the chance to meet people of consequence who gave me incredible advice about my future career.
That sounds so professional. And meeting those decision makers usually leads to our next phrase, which is a step up.
Yes.
This is an improvement, promotion, or advancement in rank or status. How is this fundamentally different from just a change of pace?
Think about the geometry of your career here.
Okay.
A change of pace is purely horizontal. Like you move from the marketing department to human resources.
Right. The work is different.
The work is different, but you aren't necessarily higher on the corporate ladder.
Got it.
But a step up is strictly vertical. You are operating at a higher, more demanding, and usually much more respected level.
It's all about elevation.
Yes.
So I could use this to formally request a title change at work, like, given the new duties I've taken on over the last year, I feel a promotion to senior director would be an appropriate step up.
Yes, you are clearly asking for vertical movement.
And if you're describing an achievement for IELTS,
You'd say something like, winning that regional coding competition was a massive step up for my confidence and my overall career trajectory.
climbing that ladder and taking those steps up usually leads to a desire for financial peace, which actually shifts us perfectly into our final theme, life's trajectory, shocks, and reflections.
A very natural progression.
Let's start with comfortably off. Having enough money to live a pleasant, secure life without worry. Is this just, the polite way of saying someone is filthy rich?
No, not at all. And the key is really the word comfortably.
Okay.
Filthy rich implies extreme luxury, right? Buying yachts and private jets.
Right.
But the word comfortably acts as a buffer. It implies a cushion between you and financial ruin.
So it's about security.
Exactly. Your debts are paid, you don't panic when a sudden repair bill arrives, and you just have peace of mind.
It's the absence of financial anxiety, not the presence of extreme wealth.
That's a great way to put it.
So chatting with an older colleague about their retirement, I could say, after 30 years of careful saving, I hope you're comfortably off enough to finally relax.
Yes, you're wishing them security.
And for an IELTS question about your future goals.
You could say, in the next 5 years, my main goal is to pay off my student loans so that I can finally feel comfortably off.
Life isn't just about paying the bills, though, right?
Hmm.
It's also about passion. And that brings us to a love affair.
Yes.
Obviously, it can mean a romantic relationship, but I want to focus on the non-romantic meaning here, which is a strong passion for an activity, Why use love affair instead of just saying you have a hobby?
Well, because a hobby is casual. You might knit occasionally on a Sunday afternoon, right? But a love affair in this non-romantic context implies an intense, lifelong dedication. There is a deep, almost irrational emotional connection to the activity.
It shows real intensity.
Absolutely.
So if my boss is obsessing over a new initiative, I might tell a coworker, this new sustainability project isn't just an assignment for him, it's an absolute love affair.
Yes, it communicates that he is completely emotionally invested in its success.
And for Lord IELTS question about your free time?
Saying, I've had a lifelong love affair with classical literature, starting when I inherited my grandfather's library, sounds infinitely more sophisticated than just saying, I like to read.
Oh, for sure. But unfortunately, life isn't all positive passions. Sometimes things go wrong, and that brings us to the phrase, too real.
Yes, a much heavier word.
It means to feel shocked, stunned, confused, or emotionally overwhelmed. How is reeling different from just being surprised?
Think about the physics of the word here. You are surprised by a surprise birthday party, right?
Like you jump a little bit.
Yeah, but you reel like a boxer taking a heavy punch to the jaw when you get completely destabilizing news.
Oh, they say.
Your body physically reacts, you stagger back. So when you use reel in a sentence, you're painting a picture of someone who has completely lost their emotional equilibrium.
Wow, so it's a heavy blow.
Yes.
So discussing a major corporate shakeup, I might say, the whole department began to reel when we heard they were unexpectedly closing the branch.
Exactly. It knocks the wind out of everyone.
And for IELTS, if you were describing a difficult transition.
You could say, I really reeled for a week after my unexpected job transfer was approved. It took a lot of time to adjust to the shock.
And, when you're reeling from a shock, sometimes the human instinct is just to run.
Yes, it is.
That leads to flee. To run away or escape quickly from danger or an unwanted situation. Now, if I'm leaving a party, why wouldn't I just say I'm fleeing? How does it differ from simply departing?
It's entirely about the element of urgency and danger. You depart a train station casually, checking your watch. But you flee a burning building.
Okay, big difference.
Huge difference. In a professional context, you can use it slightly metaphorically for an extreme situation. Like the boardroom meeting became so toxic and full of screaming that I practically had to flee the room.
You had to escape for your own sanity.
Exactly.
For IELTS, if you're describing a stressful memory, you could say, the outdoor concert became so claustrophobic and chaotic that I eventually had to flee to the street just to get some air.
That's a perfect example.
Now, after someone flees, they often vanish. Our next phrase is to drop off the radar.
Right.
Which means to disappear from public view, contact, or attention for a time. But today, everyone talks about ghosting. Are they the exact same thing?
No, they're actually different in their intent and scope.
Oh, really?
Yeah, ghosting is highly targeted. It means intentionally ignoring one specific person, like refusing to return a date's text messages.
Right.
But dropping off the radar is a general, broad retreat from the public eye or your wider social circles.
So it's not personal.
No, it's often unintentional. Life just gets busy and you fade from view.
So discussing a former major client, I can say, they used to be our biggest buyer, but they completely dropped off the radar after the 2020 merger.
Exactly. They just stopped appearing on your instruments.
And in an IELTS context, if asked about an old connection,
You could say, a childhood friend of mine dropped off the radar for a decade, but he recently returned to town with a new family.
which brings us to the end of the life cycle. In our final phrase before the quiz, a good innings.
Yes.
A long, successful, or fulfilling life or period of activity. I think this is such a beautiful way to summarize a person's legacy. But how does it differ from just living a long time?
Because duration does not equal quality.
Ah, that's true.
You can live a long time and do absolutely nothing. But a good innings, which is actually another idiom borrowed from the sport of cricket, means the time spent on the field was meaningful, impactful, and successful.
So you didn't just exist, you lived well.
Exactly. It's about the quality of the game played.
So giving a toast at a beloved colleague's retirement party after 40 years of service, I could say, you've had a truly good innings here, and we will deeply miss your leadership.
That is an incredibly respectful compliment.
And for IELTS Part 2, reflecting on a family member.
You might say, my grandmother recently passed away, but raising a loving family and having a rich life, we all agree she had a very good innings.
Beautiful. Okay, you've absorbed the mechanics and the nuances, and now it's time to test your knowledge with the SpeakDuo quiz.
Let's do it.
I will read a question and 3 options. I'll repeat the target phrase to keep it fresh in your mind. We're going to run through 8 scenarios.
Good luck, everyone.
Question 1. Which sentence uses the idiomatic phrase seen and not heard correctly based on context? Which of these shows seen and not heard?
Listen closely.
Option A. The professional theatrical sound technician was instructed to check if the actors were seen and not heard during the mute performance. Option B. The deeply frustrated young retail clerk aggressively managed to completely drop a white line. Option C. Growing up in a traditional Victorian household, children during formal dinner parties were strictly expected to be seen and not heard. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
So the answer is option C. Just to remind you, seen and not heard is about strict external rules forcing children to be quiet around adults, like that boarding school or Victorian childhood example we talked about earlier, not theatrical sound checks.
Right, question 2. Select the context where the phrase out of wedlock is most appropriately used figuratively or historically. Where does out of wedlock belong? Option A. Biographical records reveal that several children in the ancestral lineage were born out of wedlock during the 19th century. Option B. The professional wedding planning coordinator was instructed to step out of wedlock during the ceremonial altar setup. Option C. The incredibly clumsy warehouse inventory clerk accidentally managed to quickly buy some large systems. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct choice is option A. Remember the historical and lineage nuance we discussed. Out of wedlock specifically refers to children born to unmarried parents, often discussed in genealogy or historical law, not physical wedding planning.
Question 3. In which situation does someone accurately utilize the advanced phrase, a love affair, contextually? Find the real love affair. Option A. The professional courtroom divorce attorney was instructed to file a love affair during the legal separation case. Option B. His lifelong love affair with classical literature began when he inherited his grandfather's massive library of rare first editions. Option C. The completely terrified young wilderness traveler unexpectedly noticed an exceptionally massive, heavy tool chest. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
That would be option B. We talked about how a love affair doesn't just mean romance, right? It represents a deep, intense, lifelong passion for a hobby or interest, like classical literature.
Let's keep going. Question 4. Which response best demonstrates the advanced phrase, comfortably off, figuratively, which is comfortably off? Option A. After decades of careful investments and a successful career in law, they found themselves comfortably off and able to retire early. Option B. The professional furniture moving logistics worker was instructed to stay comfortably off during the heavy lifting. Option C. The incredibly clumsy warehouse inventory clerk accidentally managed to quickly catch that white balance. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option A. As we highlighted earlier, the word comfortably acts as a buffer. Being comfortably off means having enough money for a secure, worry-free life, exactly like being able to retire early.
Question 5. How would a professional accurately use the verb to flee contextually? Where would you flee? Option A. The professional insect extermination pest control operator was instructed to flee during the chemical spraying session. Option B. The completely confused amateur theater group unexpectedly decided to proudly paint a clean frame. Option C. Facing imminent political persecution and danger in his home country, his grandfather had to flee across the border overnight. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
Option C is correct. Remember, to flee requires a sense of urgency, escape, and danger. It's much more intense than simply departing a train station, so escaping political persecution fits perfectly.
Question 6. Which scenario perfectly illustrates the meaning of the phrase, a weak streak, contextually? Find the weak streak. Option A. The professional meteorological painting artist was instructed to brush a weak streak across the watercolor canvas. Option B. Despite his generally disciplined and professional demeanor, everyone knew he had a weak streak for luxury vintage automobiles. Option C. The incredibly clumsy hotel maintenance worker accidentally managed to completely drop that red tray. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option B. A weak streak is a minor character flaw or soft spot, just like having an irresistible, mild vulnerability for luxury cars. Not a fatal flaw that ruins your life.
Almost done. Question 7. Which sentence accurately utilizes the advanced phrase, slow to anger, contextually? Who here is slow to anger? Option A. Known for his remarkable patience and diplomatic temperament, the veteran mediator was notoriously slow to anger, even during hostile negotiations. Option B. The professional temperature regulation thermostat engineer was instructed to keep the device slow to anger during thermal testing. Option C. The deeply confused young kitchen assistant accidentally managed to quickly slice a fresh piece of anger. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is option A. This captures the diplomatic, patient temperament required to be slow to anger. It shows a clear choice to maintain emotional control in the room.
And our final question, question 8. Which of the following statements correctly uses slow to anger or related context correctly? Let's find one more, slow to anger. Option A. The professional anger management medical specialist anger way. Option B. The amateur chef decided it was slow to anger when boiling the pasta. Option C. Because she was slow to anger, she took a deep breath and calmly asked her colleague to explain the mistake instead of yelling. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
Option C is the winner. This reinforces the exact concept of emotional power we discussed in the workplace. Being slow to anger means taking a breath and responding calmly instead of reacting destructively.
And that is a wrap on the SpeakDuo quiz. Congratulations on making it through and significantly expanding your advanced vocabulary toolkit today.
Yes, great job, everyone. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about your day. We spent a lot of time today unpacking the underlying mechanics of these phrases, right? Like why comfortably off feels safer than filthy rich, or why a love affair conveys more devotion than just a hobby.
Yeah, the subtle differences.
Exactly. So think about this. How does mastering not just the dictionary definition of these words, but their deep emotional nuances change the way you interact with the world?
That's a great question.
It moves you from simply transmitting raw clinical data to painting vivid, emotionally accurate pictures with your words. I really encourage you to go out and test at least one of these idioms in a conversation today.
Absolutely.
Just see how it shifts the dynamic and the power in the room.
Well said. When you master these nuances, suddenly you aren't just a face on a Zoom call permanently stuck on mute. Your microphone is finally on, the picture is crisp, and you're speaking in full color. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and keep practicing.